Welcome to a deep dive that I think you're really going to find interesting.
I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, me too. So you sent over this YouTube interview with a pastor who used to be a music producer,
Uh-huh.
and he worked with Diddy.
Oh, wow.
I know, right? And at first I was like, okay, another celebrity tell-all.
Right?
But it's actually so much more than that.
It's deep. It really makes you think about the spiritual side of music and what's really going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, like the unseen forces that might be at work in the industry.
Exactly.
And it's crazy how this guy went from making beats for Diddy to leading a congregation.
Talk about a career change.
Right. So to understand his journey, we got to go back to the beginning.
Okay, back to the start.
So picture this. He's 12 years old. His dad's a pastor. And one day his dad lays hands on him and says, I impart the gift of music to you.
Wow, like a straight-up biblical moment.
And the crazy thing is it worked. Like within a couple of years, he's teaching himself piano, making beats, and everyone knows this kid is special.
He's a prodigy.
But here's where it gets interesting. He starts selling his beats locally, and word gets around that he's the real deal.
So he's already hustling at a young age.
And eventually he lands a spot in the M-Town talent search.
Now that's a big deal.
Huge, right. For those who don't know, M-Town was run by Andre Harrell.
The guy who discovered Diddy, Mary J. Blige, like a whole generation of icons.
Exactly. This competition was a direct path to the top.
Imagine being that young and having that kind of opportunity.
I know. But just as he's about to step into the spotlight, something crazy happens.
What happened?
He hears a voice telling him to burn all his raps.
Whoa.
Yeah. And he's convinced it's God.
So he's being pulled in two totally different directions.
Major internal conflict.
Yeah.
On one hand, he's got this burning ambition to make it in the music industry.
And on the other hand, he's got this spiritual calling.
Right. It's like a fork in the road.
So what does he do?
He tries to find a compromise. He figures maybe he can stay behind the scenes, produce music, but not perform.
Trying to balance his passion with his faith?
Exactly. But as we'll see, even staying behind the scenes in that world can be pretty wild.
I bet. So what happens next?
Well, remember that $7,000 check he got for that 5-minute track?
Yeah, that was just the beginning.
He keeps sending Diddy more music and eventually gets the call to fly out to New York.
The big leagues.
He lands in New York City, goes to Diddy's studio on Broadway, and Diddy rolls up in a drop-top Ferrari 360 Spider.
Oh, wow. Talk about making an entrance.
Right. It's like something out of a movie.
But even with all the glitz and glamour, he's still struggling with that voice in his head.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He starts to feel this inner turmoil, like he doesn't belong in that world.
The party lifestyle, the excess it was starting to wear on him.
And then there's this one story that really stuck with me about a party he went to with Diddy.
Oh, yeah. What happened?
So Diddy asks everyone what kind of girls they want, and then all these women just show up.
Like they were ordered off a menu.
It's crazy, right?
It really highlights the dark side of the industry.
Yeah, the exploitation, the power dynamics. Pretty messed up.
And then he starts seeing seances and ritualistic stuff happening in the studio.
Wait, what?
Yeah, as if music creation and these spiritual forces were somehow connected.
That's getting creepy.
It's like he's seeing this whole other side of the music industry that most people never do.
The stuff behind the curtains.
Exactly. And it's not all pretty.
Definitely not. So he's dealing with all this internal conflict. And then it all comes to a head at this massive industry party in Las Vegas.
What happened in Vegas?
Well, the pressure, the lifestyle, the conflict, it just becomes too much.
So he walks away.
Yeah, he literally walks out of this wild Vegas party and ends up crying on the strip.
Oh, man.
He calls his dad begging for a plane ticket home.
Sounds like a total breakdown.
It was. But it gets even crazier. He starts getting threats.
Threats? From who?
People connected to Diddy, his family, even his church.
They were all pressuring him to go back?
It's like he got caught in this web of power and influence.
That's intense.
So he makes this promise to God. If you help me out of this, I'll obey you. I'll do whatever you want.
Wow, a serious vow.
The threats eventually die down, but his story doesn't end there. He still feels this pull back to music.
Like he can't escape it.
Yeah, it's like an addiction.
So what does he do?
He gets access to a studio in Houston, and this is where things take a very unexpected turn.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
He's given these ganja cookies, and let's just say he might have overindulged a little.
How many were talking?
6.
6. Oh, boy.
Yeah, it starts with hallucinations, then a full-blown panic attack, and then he says he enters this red room.
A red room? What is that?
He describes it as this dark, terrifying space where he's surrounded by demonic figures.
Whoa, hold on. He actually saw demons.
That's what he says.
Do you think it was real or just the drugs?
It's hard to say. He even describes feeling himself passing out, losing consciousness.
That's scary.
He manages to drag himself to the elevator, collapses, and a security guard finds him.
So he's unconscious in the hospital.
But here's the thing. While he's out, he can still hear what's going on around him.
Like he's in between worlds.
Exactly. He hears the doctors talking about his condition, how they're baffled by his high blood pressure.
They couldn't figure out what was wrong.
No. And then he hears something truly remarkable. The voices of his pastors praying over him.
They came to the hospital.
Somehow they knew he was there. And as they pray, he feels this wave of peace wash over him.
Wow, like a divine intervention.
The demonic voices disappear, and he can feel God's presence.
That's powerful, but he's still terrified, right?
He's wondering if he's messed up his mind permanently.
From messing with those dark forces.
So he needs to find some reassurance that he's on the right path.
Makes sense. So what happens?
He prays to God, "If you're telling me to leave music, completely give me a sign."
Name.
The day he's released from the hospital, he finds a cassette tape on the ground
The cassette tape.
called The Truth Behind Hip Hop by Pastor G. Craig Lewis.
Seriously. That's either a wild coincidence or a clear sign.
Right. He listens to the tape and it helps him understand the spiritual battle he's been fighting.
So it was a turning point for him.
A moment of clarity.
Yeah.
He realizes he needs to distance himself from the secular music world.
So he goes gospel.
He figures if he's going to make music, it's going to be for God.
That makes sense. But what he discovers next is perhaps the biggest twist of all.
Oh, what's that?
He says the gospel industry is almost one and the same with the secular world.
Wait, are you saying there's no real difference between those Diddy parties and the gospel scene?
He clarifies that the spirit is the same, the temptations, the compromises, the power dynamics.
So you're saying there are Diddy parties happening in gospel too?
Just maybe with a different facade.
Wow, I did not see that coming.
He even shares stories of stolen songs, betrayal, people trying to cheat him out of royalties.
No way.
He actually says he felt more respected and fairly treated in the R&B and hip-hop world.
That's wild. So if both worlds have the same problems, what makes gospel music truly gospel?
That's the question that leads us to one of the most interesting parts of this interview, his concept of the sound of distinction.
Okay, I'm listening. What is the sound of distinction?
He believes that true gospel music is produced by the manifestation of the Holy Spirit.
Go on.
He says that when the Holy Spirit is present in a room, it creates a different sonic frequency, a distinct sound unlike anything else.
So it's not just about the lyrics.
It's deeper than that. There's something happening on a spiritual level that affects the actual sound of the music.
That's a pretty radical idea.
He even compares it to the story of David playing music to soothe King Saul and drive away evil spirits.
Music as a weapon against spiritual darkness.
Exactly. But how do we even begin to understand this sound of distinction? Is it a literal frequency we can measure, or is it more of a spiritual resonance?
That's a great question. And it's what makes this whole story so thought-provoking.
It really flips the script on everything we think we know about the music industry.
Both secular and gospel.
It challenges us to consider the power of music not just as entertainment, but as a force that can be used for both good and evil.
And as listeners, it begs the question, how do we discern that sound of distinction in our own lives?
It's a question worth exploring. Think about the music you listen to, the emotions it evokes, the thoughts it inspires. Could there be more to it than just melodies and rhythms?
It's a mind-blowing concept. We've all felt the power of music, but to think there might be this spiritual dimension to it, that certain sounds could attract or repel spiritual forces.
It makes you wonder what kind of energy we're inviting into our lives through the music we choose.
It's a whole new way of thinking about music.
It really challenges us to think more critically about the music we consume and create.
So if music can be used for both good and evil, how do we develop that kind of spiritual discernment?
Well, it starts with awareness.
Awareness of
How different types of music make us feel, what thoughts and emotions they trigger within us.
So, like, are we drawn to music that promotes peace, joy, love? Or are we drawn to sounds that stir up negativity?
Exactly. Trust your intuition. Your body and soul will tell you what resonates with you.
I like that. And I guess it's not about judging specific genres, but recognizing that music carries energy, and that energy can resonate with our own spiritual vibrations. So you're saying there's like a spiritual frequency to music.
It's an interesting way to put it. Think of it like this. Our thoughts, emotions, and intentions create a certain vibrational frequency within us,
Okay.
and certain types of music can either harmonize with those frequencies or clash with them.
So if I'm feeling anxious and I listen to calming music, it can help shift my energy.
Exactly. The music is resonating with a frequency of peace and tranquility within you.
But if I'm feeling down and I listen to aggressive music, it might actually make me feel worse.
Because it's amplifying the frequencies of negativity and chaos that are already present within you.
Okay, so now apply that to the spiritual realm.
Right. If we believe that there are both positive and negative spiritual forces at work in the world, then it stands to reason that music could be used to attract or repel those forces.
So if we're constantly listening to music that aligned with lower vibrational frequencies like fear, anger, or lust,
Then we might be inadvertently attracting negative spiritual influences into our lives.
that's kind of scary.
It's something to consider. And on the flip side, if we fill our lives with music that resonates with higher frequencies like love, joy, and peace.
We might be creating a more positive spiritual environment.
Precisely. It's about being mindful of the music we consume and understanding the energy it carries.
So it's not about saying all secular music is bad and all gospel music is good.
Right. It's about being aware of the energetic and spiritual qualities of the music we choose.
And taking responsibility for our sonic diets.
Exactly. Just like we pay attention to the food we eat to nourish our bodies, we should be mindful of the music we consume to nourish our souls.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm ready to start being more intentional about the music I listen to.
Mm-hmm.
What are some practical tips?
Well, first, pay attention to how music makes you feel.
Like emotionally and energetically.
Exactly. Do you feel uplifted, inspired, energized? Or do you feel drained, agitated, depressed? Trust your gut. Your body will tell you what resonates with you.
Don't be afraid to branch out and explore different genres and styles too.
Absolutely. There's a whole world of music out there waiting to be discovered.
And what about the intention behind the music?
That's important too. Who created the music and why? What message are they trying to convey?
Sometimes understanding the artist's intent can give you insights into the energy of the music.
And don't forget the power of creating your own music.
Uh,
Whether you play an instrument, sing, or just enjoy making music with your voice, expressing yourself creatively through sound can be a powerful way to connect with your own inner harmony.
I think what's so empowering about this whole concept is that it puts the power back in our hands as listeners.
We get to choose the soundtrack to our lives.
And in doing so, we can create a more harmonious and spiritually enriching experience.
Well said. It reminds us that music is not just entertainment, but a powerful tool for self-discovery, healing, and spiritual growth.
And who knows, maybe by being more mindful of the sound of distinction, we can help shift the collective consciousness towards a more loving and peaceful world.
That's a beautiful thought. It brings to mind a question for you to consider. If music can be a force for both good and evil, what kind of sonic legacy are you creating in the world?
Wow, that's a powerful question to ponder.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the impact of our musical choices, you know?
It's like we're all adding to this invisible sonic landscape.
Right.
And it affects everyone.
Yeah.
It's just ourselves.
That's a pretty big responsibility.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's also empowering because it means we have a choice.
In what way?
We're not just passively absorbing whatever sounds are out there.
Right.
We can actively shape our sonic environment.
So how do we do that? How do we cultivate this sound of distinction, not just in the music we listen to, but also the music we create and share?
That's a great question, and it brings us to another level of this whole conversation.
Okay.
Because think about it. Every time we share music with someone,
Like when we recommend a song or make a playlist,
exactly, we're extending the reach of that music.
we're putting it out there for other people to experience.
And in a sense, we become like sonic DJs shaping the collective soundscape.
It's almost like we have this responsibility to be mindful of the kind of sonic energy we're putting out into the world.
Exactly, because are we contributing to a culture of peace and harmony? Or are we amplifying messages of fear and division?
That reminds me of something we talked about earlier.
What's that?
The intention behind the music. Like who created it and why? What are they trying to say with their sound?
Right, because that energy, the creator's energy, is embedded in the music.
And even if we're not aware of it on a conscious level,
It can still affect us.
it's like with advertising or propaganda.
Oh, yeah.
They use music to manipulate our emotions and behaviors.
And often we don't even realize it's happening.
So we have to be really discerning about the music we choose.
Not just about how it makes us feel, but also about the message behind it.
It's like being a smart media consumer.
Exactly.
Right.
We have to think critically and not just passively absorb everything we hear.
And it's not about judging or condemning certain types of music.
It's about making conscious choices.
Choices that align with our values.
Right.
And recognizing the power that music has.
Absolutely. Music is a powerful force, and we have a responsibility to use it wisely.
It's like we're sonic alchemists transforming energy through sound.
It's a beautiful way to think about it, and it speaks to the transformative potential of music.
So if we can learn to recognize the sound of distinction in our lives,
The music that truly nourishes and uplifts us.
we can tap into that power and use it to create a more beautiful and harmonious world.
That's a wonderful thought to end on.
It is. And to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep listening for that sound of distinction in your own lives.
Until next time.
Happy listening.